My mother broke down crying last weekend after I destroyed her favorite family story in front of my boyfriend. 20 years of lies unraveled in 30 seconds when I told everyone what really happened that Halloween night. The cute hot dog costume story she loves telling at family gatherings? It was psychological torture disguised as motherly creativity. She's been telling this fabricated version for 2 decades. How her quirky 8-year-old daughter rejected princess costumes and begged to be a hot dog instead. How she went out of her way to create this special costume for her unique little girl. The story that makes everyone laugh and call her such a creative, understanding mother. But I remember what really happened that night. I remember sobbing in a garbage meat costume while other girls twirled in princess dresses. I remember the months of teasing that followed. I remember pretending she was the evil queen from Snow White, forcing me to wear rags while she smiled and took pictures. My brother found her looking through those Halloween photos, crying over the memory she had been rewriting for 20 years. The memory where she destroyed her 8-year-old daughter's dreams, because she thought Snow White was a bad role model. The memory where she chose humiliation over happiness for her own child. Now the whole family knows the truth about her perfect parenting story, and she cannot hide behind the lies anymore. The most devastating part was watching my boyfriend's face change as he realized the woman who had just charmed him with her creative parenting story was actually describing child abuse. The shift from admiration to horror happened in real time as I spoke my truth. 6 months before that Halloween, I had fallen completely in love with Snow White. Not the casual kind of childhood obsession, but the deep, all-consuming devotion that only 8-year-old girls can feel for their Disney princess. I would clean the house pretending to be Snow White tidying up for the dwarfs. I would hum her songs while doing chores, completely lost in the fantasy of living in a magical world where kindness always won. My dad understood this obsession perfectly. We would watch the movie together constantly, and he would smile when I sang along to every word. He was the one who encouraged my Snow White dreams, who told me I would make the most beautiful Snow White for Halloween. In his eyes, I could see genuine delight in my innocent joy. But my mother had different ideas about appropriate role models for her daughter. The ballet studio was doing a special princess dance for Halloween, and every girl got to sign up for their favorite princess slot. I showed up early with my dad the week before Halloween to claim the Snow White spot. I was so excited I could barely sleep for days. I told everyone at school, my teachers, my friends. For weeks, all I could talk about was how I was going to be Snow White. But that level of pure childhood excitement was not enough. Create expression for my mother. She had decided that princesses were boring, that her daughter needed to stand out, needed to be quirky and different from all the other girls. She had already been dropping hints about how maybe Snow White was not such a good role model, how maybe I should consider something more unique that would make me special. The breaking point came when I tried to make dinner for the family, just like Snow White made food for the dwarfs. I was 8 years old, attempting to cook hot dogs, and I made a mess in the kitchen. Instead of seeing an imaginative child playing out her favorite movie, my mother saw defiance and stupidity that needed correction. That was when she decided to teach me a lesson about consequences in reality. The night before Halloween, she presented me with a hot dog costume. Not a beautiful creative costume that might actually be cute. A cheap, deliberately humiliating hot dog suit that looked like it belonged in a garbage can. She told me this was my new costume, and if I refused to wear it, I would never be allowed to watch Snow White again. But here is what nobody knew until last weekend, what made her deception even more calculated and cruel. She had already called the ballet studio and canceled my Snow White slot 3 days earlier. She had already decided to humiliate me, and the kitchen incident was just her excuse to justify the psychological torture she had planned for weeks. The woman who spent 20 years telling everyone about her creative parenting had actually spent weeks planning to emotionally destroy her 8-year-old daughter's dreams because she thought it would be funny to watch me suffer. What made the deception even more twisted was how she rewrote my reactions in her mythical version. In her story, I was excited about the hot dog costume, proud to be different from all the princess girls. In reality, I spent the entire day pretending she was the evil queen from Snow White, the only way an 8-year-old mind could process such deliberate cruelty from the person supposed to protect her dreams. The costume itself was deliberately humiliating. Not creative or artistic or remotely cute, but specifically designed to make me look ridiculous next to the beautiful princess costumes she knew the other girls would be wearing. She had calculated every element to maximize my embarrassment while maintaining plausible deniability about her true intentions. For 20 years, she turned my childhood trauma into her parenting triumph. Every family gathering, every new boyfriend meeting the family, every holiday dinner included the hilarious tale of her quirky daughter who chose to be a hot dog over a princess. And every time she told it, I would smile and nod along, because what 8-year-old has the words to explain psychological manipulation? What teenager wants to be the one who ruins family fun with dark truths about beloved family stories? What young adult wants to be accused of being dramatic or oversensitive about childhood memories that everyone else finds charming? But the truth was always there, buried under years of conditioning and politeness and family loyalty. The truth was waiting for the right moment to explode and destroy her carefully constructed mythology about what kind of mother she really was. The transformation from victim to truth-teller did not happen overnight. For 20 years, I carried the shame of that Halloween while she carried the glory of her creative parenting story. Every family gathering, every new boyfriend meeting the family, every holiday dinner would include the hilarious tale of her quirky daughter who chose to be a hot dog over a princess. And every time she told it, I would smile and nod along, participating in my own humiliation, because I had been trained from childhood to protect her feelings about things she did to hurt me. I had learned to prioritize her comfort over my own truth, her narrative over my actual memories. Boo. Bow. Last weekend, something inside me snapped with crystalline clarity. We were watching a movie when that Target commercial came on. The one with a little girl in the hot dog costume, looking adorable and happy. My mother's eyes lit up with that familiar gleam, the one that meant story time was coming. She turned to my boyfriend with that practiced smile and launched into her favorite tale. "You should have seen her," she said, her voice warm with fake maternal pride. All the other girls wanted to be Disney princesses, but my daughter marched up to me and demanded to be a hot dog. I thought it was so creative and unique. I spent hours making that costume because I wanted to support her individuality. I watched my boyfriend's face as he smiled politely, charmed by this story of unconventional parenting that celebrated childhood creativity. I watched my mother bask in his approval, feeding off his admiration for her understanding and artistic sensibility. I watched her rewrite history in real time, turning my trauma into her triumph yet again. That was when 20 years of suppressed rage crystallized into perfect, cold clarity. "That is not what happened," I said quietly, my voice cutting through her performance like a knife. The room went silent instantly. My mother's practiced smile froze on her face like a mask that had slipped. My boyfriend looked confused, sensing the sudden tension but not understanding its source. My brother stopped scrolling his phone and looked up, recognizing something dangerous in my tone. "Excuse me?" my mother said, her voice tight with warning and barely controlled panic. "That is not what happened," I repeated, louder this time, letting 20 years of suppressed truth finally have its moment. "I never asked to be a hot dog. I wanted to be Snow White. I had been planning to be Snow White for months. You forced me to wear that costume because you thought Snow White was a bad role model." I watched the color drain from her face as I continued, each word hitting her like a physical blow. "I was signed up for the Snow White slot at ballet class. Dad took me early to make sure I got it. I told everyone at school I was going to be Snow White. I was obsessed with that movie, and you knew it. You knew exactly how much it meant to me." My mother tried to interrupt with some weak protest, but I was just getting started after 20 years of silence. "You made that costume because I tried to cook dinner like Snow White did for the dwarves, and you decide. Dad, that made her a bad influence on me. You told me if I did not wear the hot dog suit, you would never let me watch Snow White again. I was 8 years old, and you blackmailed me into wearing a humiliating costume because you thought it would be funny." The silence in the room was deafening. My boyfriend looked horrified as he processed what he was hearing. My brother was staring at our mother with new understanding dawning in his eyes, seeing her behavior through an adult lens for the first time. "And, I spent the entire day pretending you were the evil queen from Snow White," I continued, my voice gaining strength with each word of truth. "I pretended the hot dog costume was the rags she forced Snow White to wear. It was the only way I could get through the day without having a complete psychological breakdown." My mother's face had gone from pale to red to something approaching gray. The practiced charm had completely evaporated, leaving behind something raw and vulnerable and deeply guilty. I remember crying in that costume, I said, my voice now steady and clear and unforgiving. "I remember the other girls laughing at me. I remember you taking pictures and smiling while I was miserable. I remember you telling everyone for weeks afterward how creative and unique I was, when really you had just emotionally tortured your own daughter for your own entertainment." The room felt like it was holding its breath. My mother opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again, realizing there was nothing she could say. No way to spin this story back into the charming anecdote she had been telling for 20 years. "You spent 2 decades lying about that night," I finished, delivering the final blow. "Making yourself the hero of a story where you were actually the villain. And I let you do it because I was too young to understand what you had done to me, and then too conditioned to speak up about it." My mother stood up abruptly and left the room without saying a word. Her entire mythology, about herself crumbling in real time. My boyfriend reached over and squeezed my hand, his touch gentle and supportive. My brother looked at me with something like awe and said, "Jesus Christ, I never knew." The immediate aftermath was electric with tension and revelation. My boyfriend, who had been charmed by what he thought was a story about creative parenting, was now processing the reality that he had just witnessed me confront my childhood abuser. The shift in energy was palpable as everyone calibrated their understanding of family dynamics. They thought they knew. My brother's reaction was particularly powerful because he had lived through that Halloween too, but as a sibling observer, not the direct target. He had watched me crying in that costume, had seen me trying to make the best of a humiliating situation, but had been too young to understand the psychological warfare happening. Now, as an adult, he could see the deliberate cruelty for what it actually was. The beauty of truth. As a weapon became immediately apparent. I did not have to maintain any lies or cover any tracks. I did not have to remember complex revenge schemes or worry about evidence. I just had to stop protecting her feelings about something she had done to hurt me deliberately. After they left that night, my brother texted me with information that validated everything I had suspected. He said he found our mother in her room, crying over the photo album from that Halloween. The pictures she had treasured for 20 years as evidence of her creative parenting. Now she was seeing them for what they really were. Documentation of her own calculated cruelty. He said she kept saying, she was so little. She was just so little. For the first time in 20 years, my mother was seeing the Halloween through her daughter's eyes, instead of her own carefully constructed narrative. She was seeing the 8-year-old girl who just wanted to be a princess, who had her dreams destroyed by the person who was supposed to protect and nurture them. The photos that had once been proof of her creative parenting now looked like evidence of psychological abuse. The costume that had seemed quirky and unique in her story now looked deliberately humiliating and cruel. The smile on my face in those pictures, which she had interpreted as happiness and cooperation, now revealed itself as the desperate attempt of a child trying to make the best of a horrible situation. And I realized that sometimes the most powerful revenge is not planning or scheming or elaborate plots designed to destroy someone over time. Sometimes it is just telling the truth when someone least expects it. Sometimes it is refusing to let them hide behind their comfortable lies anymore. Sometimes it is just saying, that is not what happened, and watching their whole carefully constructed narrative collapse under the weight of undeniable reality. The simplicity was beautiful and permanent. She could not re-gaslight me into believing her version of events. She could not convince my boyfriend or my brother that I was being dramatic or oversensitive. The facts spoke for themselves, and they were absolutely damning. My mother has not spoken to me since that night. According to my brother, she has been going through old photo albums and home videos, apparently seeing our entire childhood through a completely different lens. He says she keeps asking him if there are other stories she has been telling wrong, other memories she has rewritten to make herself look better. The family group chat has been eerily quiet. No one knows how to talk about the fact that one of our favorite family stories was actually a story about deliberate child psychological abuse. No one knows how to reconcile the charming creative mother they thought they knew with a woman who would emotionally torture her 8-year-old daughter for entertainment. My boyfriend has been incredibly supportive throughout this revelation, but I can tell he is processing some uncomfortable truths about family dynamics and childhood trauma. He keeps asking me if there are other stories, other memories that might not be what they seem. And honestly, I have been asking myself the same question. Because once you see one lie clearly, you start to wonder what other truths you have been trained not to see. The strangest part is how different I feel now. For 20 years I carried shame about that Halloween. Shame about being the weird kid in the hot dog costume. Shame about not being brave enough to refuse. Shame about letting her tell that story over and over without correcting it. But now I realize the shame was never mine to carry. It belonged to the adult who chose humiliation over kindness. It belonged to the mother who prioritized her own entertainment over her child's emotional well-being. It belonged to the woman who spent 20 years lying about what she did because even she knew it was wrong. I have been thinking a lot about other kids who might be carrying shame that is not theirs. Kids whose parents have rewritten their trauma into charming family stories. Kids who have been trained to smile and nod along while their abusers are praised for their creativity and uniqueness. The response from extended family has been mixed and revealing. Some relatives have quietly reached out to express support and share their own uncomfortable memories about my mother's behavior over the years. Others have suggested that I am being too harsh about nothing that happened when I was a child, that I should focus on forgiveness and moving forward. But what these family members do not understand is that this was never about what happened when I was 8. This was about what has been happening for the 20 years since then. Every time she told that story and I had to pretend it was charming instead of traumatic. This was about the ongoing psychological impact of having your trauma transformed into someone else's entertainment, of being forced to participate in the mythology of your own abuse. The most validating response came from my cousin, who is now a child psychologist. She reached out after hearing about the confrontation and told me that what my mother did was a textbook example of psychological manipulation and emotional abuse. She said that forcing a child to participate in their own humiliation, then rewriting that humiliation as choice and creativity, is a particularly damaging form of gaslighting. She also told me that my response was incredibly healthy and necessary, that refusing to continue protecting an abuser's narrative is a crucial step in healing from childhood trauma. Her professional validation meant everything to me, because it confirmed that my memories were accurate and my reaction was appropriate. I have also been contacted by other adults who had similar experiences with parents who rewrote their childhood trauma into family entertainment. One woman told me about her mother, who told a hilarious story about the time she locked her daughter outside in the snow for being rude, conveniently leaving out the part about the daughter being 4 years old and outside for 3 hours. Another person shared how their father loved to tell the story about making them eat dog food as punishment for being picky eaters, always framing it as teaching valuable lessons about gratitude and not being spoiled. The pattern is sickeningly common. Parents who abuse their children psychologically then spend years rewriting that abuse as creative parenting or valuable life lessons. These conversations have made me realize that my experience is not isolated, that there are many adults walking around carrying shame for things that were done to them as children by people who have spent years reframing abuse as creative parenting. The psychological impact of this type of abuse is particularly insidious because it makes the victim complicit in their own trauma narrative. Every time I smiled and nodded along with her story, I was participating in my own humiliation. Every time I let her tell that story without correcting it, I was enabling her to profit emotionally from my childhood pain. But children do not have the psychological tools to resist this kind of manipulation. 8-year-olds do not understand gaslighting or narrative control or emotional abuse. They just know that the adult they depend on for survival is telling a story that makes them feel bad. And they learn to smile along to avoid conflict. The most important lesson I have learned from this experience is about the difference between protecting family harmony and enabling family dysfunction. For 20 years, I protected my mother's feelings about something she did to hurt me. I prioritized her comfort over my own truth. I allowed her to benefit from a lie that caused me ongoing pain. But protecting an abuser's narrative is not kindness, it is complicity. Allowing someone to profit emotionally from a lie about your trauma is not family loyalty, it is self-betrayal. And maintaining silence about abuse to preserve family peace is not love, it is enabling. The aftermath has been both liberating and isolating. Some family members have rallied around my mother, suggesting that I am being too dramatic about something that happened decades ago. They argue that she was just trying to be a creative parent, and that I should forgive and forget. But forgiveness without acknowledgement is not healing, it is just more enabling. And I cannot forget something that was never properly remembered in the first place. Her version of events erased my actual experience completely. Other family members have quietly supported my decision to speak up, sharing their own uncomfortable memories about my mother's treatment of children over the years. Apparently, the hot dog costume incident was not an isolated example of her using psychological manipulation to control and humiliate the children in her care. The most unexpected outcome has been my mother's apparent psychological breakdown. According to my brother, she has been obsessively going through old photos and videos, questioning other stories she has told about our childhood. She seems to be having some kind of reckoning with the reality of what she actually did versus what she convinced herself she did. Part of me feels sorry for her, watching her confront the truth about her own behavior, but mostly I feel relieved that the burden of maintaining her lies is no longer mine to carry. If you have family stories that do not match your memories, if you have trauma that has been repackaged as humor, if you have parents who are the heroes of every story they tell about your childhood, you are not crazy. Trust your memories. Trust your feelings. Trust the 8-year-old version of yourself who knew something was wrong, even if they could not articulate it. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is simply refuse to participate in someone else's lies about your life. So, many times healing starts with just saying, that is not what happened. The hot dog costume is long gone, thrown away decades ago. But the truth about what it represented will live forever now, no longer hidden behind a charming family story. And that truth has set me free from 20 years of carrying someone else's shame about something they did to hurt me. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to lie for the people who hurt you. Sometimes justice looks like truth-telling instead of plot, planning. Sometimes healing begins with 3 simple words. That is not what happened.